Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaste, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai and we are on a journey to explore the interesting intersections between numbers and narratives. In the past, we have discussed the term that we are going to study today in some brief comments. We have spoken about narrative design and structures in the second lecture for this module. But today's lecture takes us in some depth. Not just about narrative design, but about structures and arcs of storytelling, and not them separately, them having been combined with their different purposes, different natures, and the kind of coordination that needs to happen between structures and arcs. In the previous lectures, we have touched upon some of these things in brief comments, but today is a deep dive. So let us begin by justifying why are we even talking about narrative design. Great data stories don't just present information. They guide the reader through a structured, meaningful journey. Journey being the operative word. It is not just about reporting the data, but it is about reproducing the experience of analysis, the journey of discovery that we took as data analysts so that the reader understands the importance and the message of the data in a language that they understand. This lecture explores narrative structures as in how stories are built and narrative arcs as in the shape of the story's emotional journey. With critical thinking and logical reasoning, your analysis will be accurate. But with the narrative design of structure and arc, it will connect, inspire, or persuade. That is our goal today, to build on our understanding of critical thinking and logical reasoning in terms of accuracy and graduate to a level where we can leverage the skill of narrative design, structures, and arcs in a way that helps us connect with our audience, persuade them, or inspire them. Not only from a functional point of view, but in a way that truly matters, in a way that makes real difference. Before we move forward, here's a little reflection question for us. Think of a documentary or a movie that you remember. What made it stick? Was it the events or the way that the story was told? Was it only the plot or the emotions that you felt going along the story? Think about that. It'll help you understand what role does narrative design play in making a story effective. Let us now begin exploring the first part of our focal point today, story structures. This is about building the story framework. The first basic story structure that we studied in the previous lectures was beginning, middle, and end. We have discussed this in some brief comments in the first lecture. This timeless structure works well even in simple data narratives. The beginning is the setup. You introduce the context and the problem. For example, every year, thousands of Indian school children drop out before grade 10. But why? Then comes the middle. The why is the conflict or the insight. It presents the analysis and the challenges that lie at the heart of our data analysis. For example, data from 2019 to 2022 shows the highest dropout rates occur after class 8, with a sharp rise among girls in rural areas. If you see, there's a conflict. The highest dropout rates after class 8, with a sharp rise among girls in rural areas, that is not only an insight, it is the problem, it is the challenge, it is the conflict point in a story. And in the end, it offers a resolution of that conflict. It offers insight, action, or future outlook. For example, here is a data-based resolution for the conflict that emerged in the middle part of the story. When the Rajasthan government introduced midday meals in secondary schools, dropout rates dropped by 28% in 3 years. This is not only a data point, it is providing you the resolution for the conflict that we introduced in the middle part. This is the end part of the story, where the tension dissolves and you end up with a solution, a data-based solution for the conflict that emerged in the middle of the story. You walk away not only with the insight of the story, but also the emotional core of what the tension has resolved into. Based on this structure, let me give you a very basic exercise. This is baby steps, but it is important. Break your last project. Could be anything. Could be a database project, could be a non-data project. But you have to break it into a beginning, middle, and end kind of a structure. If you can just write one sentence each, that should be fine. But try to recognize what was the part in the beginning, what in the middle, and what in the end. This will help you think in structures. It will help you think in narratives. And that is the core skill that we are learning with this module. So, pick up anything that you have done, could be an academic project, could be a professional project, and start to break it into a beginning, middle, and end kind of a structure. The second framework that I want to discuss with you today is the problem solution impact framework. This is a practical approach in NGO, policy, and startup data storytelling. These are the organizations and institutions that often use this problem solution impact storytelling framework. The problem talks about what issue is being faced. The solution presents what intervention or insight is being applied. And the impact talks about what happened or can happen as a result of that solution. Let's take a case study example. For example, the problem can be farmers in Maharashtra are unable to predict pest outbreaks. Based on this problem, the immediate next step that we communicate is the solution. A satellite-based early warning system using artificial intelligence. Based on both the problem and the solution, we start discussing the impact. Mind you, the impact is also the data insight, but we are framing it as the causal effect of the solution. Farmers in 3 districts reported 40% reduction in crop loss within 1 season. This right here is the impact of the solution that we just introduced. Mind you, this is at the end of the day a data point, but we are framing it as an impact point so that our target audience is not only convinced but also persuaded for the solution that we presented in the middle of the story. Here's a reflection for you. Think of a challenge in your community, something that you encounter on a daily basis. How would you explain it using a problem-solution-impact structure? We have done an exercise for the beginning, middle, end structure, and now let us do one based on our real-life experiences with the problem-solution-impact structure. This is something that is quite practical. A lot of organizations and institutions use this structure very regularly in their data communication for technical and non-technical audiences. You just have to think about a challenge that you face every day within your community. Try to break it apart into a problem, solution, and impact structure. We discussed 2 basic structures that we could employ in our practical pursuit of framing data narratives. Now, let us move on to the second part of today's lecture, narrative arcs. Narrative arcs give emotion and momentum to your story. They also provide a shape, a kind of trajectory, a pathway in which your story will progress. It keeps the readers engaged by adding a sense of movement, meaning a character or a situation or a conflict, a desire, they are all moving in a certain direction. And that movement is defined by the type of narrative arc that you will use. Here are a few different types of narrative arcs that we can practically implement in our data storytelling. The first narrative arc is something that we discussed 2 lectures ago. If you remember, the visionary arc, something that helps us turn data insights into big picture possibilities. This arc shows how data can create a better future. This is about persuading your audience with a grand vision. Tough job, I understand, but it can be done in a structured, pattern-based manner. In the beginning, you present the current limitation or missed opportunities, something that is not being fulfilled, something that could be done but is not being done right now. In the middle, you introduce the data or innovation that brings hope. Mind you, this is an emotion. Hope is not something that is esoteric. It is something based strongly in evidence, in emotion, and in innovation that helps us imagine a better future. Now that your audience is on the same side as you, you bring them to the end. You paint a vision of what is possible. Let us understand the visionary arc with an example. A startup in Bengaluru analyzed public bus GPS data. Their data story showed how better route optimization could reduce commute times by 35%. Their visionary arc ended with a prototype app that now helps 80,000 daily users. So, if you see a problem that was imminent, a gap that could be filled, and a vision that really turned an entire city around and started helping 80,000 daily users. This right here is the design of something that can be imagined as a probable, possible future. If you are to persuade an audience on a big idea, on a big picture possibility, the visionary arc is your perfect solution for narrative design. Here's an exercise for you. If you could improve one system in your city with data, what would it be? Start outlining this with a visionary arc, because you would be able to see a future based on your solution and based on the recommendations emerging from the data at hand. Spot the missing details, try to suggest a solution, and then combine both of them into a vision for the future. The second narrative arc that I want to share with you is the classical storytelling arc called the hero's journey. This is where a character goes through different stages of a story and discovers the nuances of the world around them. A classical storytelling arc adapted for analysts or communities within data. First, there is an ordinary world, which is an everyday situation. But something is lacking in this ordinary world. Therefore, there is a call to adventure, a challenge that appears. Through that call to adventure and the journey, there are trials and learnings. Data is collected and data is analyzed. Then, based on that journey, there is a transformation, a powerful insight that changes things. And when the hero, when the protagonist returns to the ordinary world, the insight is shared with the others. It ends up changing the ordinary world for better. This is the arc of a typical story that often resonates across different storytelling cultures across the world. And we here are trying to adapt it to data storytelling. The hero's journey, if you would like to learn more about it, there is a brilliant book called A Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. And I would genuinely urge you to pick that book up and understand the hero's journey in detail, not just within data, but as a tool of storytelling universally. It is something that has been tried and tested across centuries, and it keeps recurring across different cultures time and again. But coming back to data storytelling, let us look at the hero's journey in data as an example. The rural education project in Jharkhand can be explained through the hero's journey. The ordinary world is that the schools are struggling. That is the state of things as they are right now. Then there is a protagonist, a character, a non-profit in this case. A non-profit has a call to adventure in which they want to understand why are the schools struggling. The trials that they face is that they collect 3 years of teacher attendance and learning outcomes. The transformation, the revelation that comes to them is that the teacher absenteeism is the key issue. The teachers just don't show up. There is an absenteeism problem in Jharkhand's rural education project. Once they are transformed in their worldview, they return and they share the finding with district administrators. As a result, new attendance policies emerge and 18% of improvement in learning outcomes comes out as the consequence. This entire trajectory is the hero's journey seen through the lens of data. You would think about many other different stories in which the hero's journey can be implemented. A clue that I can give you is that my favorite hero's journey story is the Thirsty Crow. Yes, the same Thirsty Crow story that you and I have heard since our childhood. That is a hero's journey story. You can see how it also follows the same beats of storytelling. The same beats can be implemented within a data narrative as well. The last arc that I want to share with you today is the discovery arc, from uncertainty to understanding. This is perfect for exploratory data analysis stories, something that does not have a point to prove, but it is only trying to wade their way through the data at hand. This is where you begin with a mystery or a question, not necessarily a problem, but a question, something worth exploring. Then you walk through inquiry and analysis. And you end by revealing a useful insight. This does not have a problem at heart. It has a question at heart. Here's an example. Let's look at Kerala's health data. During COVID-19, an intern at a public health institute noticed a strange correlation between mobile tower data and a spike in infections. Now, this is a mystery, right? How is mobile tower data correlated with a spike in infections? The insight is there, but the causality is something that is mysterious. The analysis revealed that the mobility patterns were a strong predictor of a spike in infections. So, for example, if you were traveling through a longer route and your mobile connected with multiple towers for network, it meant that you covered a long distance and you were more likely to be infected by COVID. This insight influenced localized lockdowns as well. So once something truly insightful emerges, it can turn into an actionable recommendation, even if the question at heart seems to be implausible. Once analysis is done, once a process takes place, it reveals something surprising, something worth learning and thinking about, and eventually implementing into an actionable recommendation. Here's a quick exercise for you. Write down one discovery moment that you had in a data project. What were you looking for? And what did you find instead? Discovery is an openness of curiosity. You start with a question, not a problem, like we discussed. Problems tend to centralize our focus, while discoveries tend to widen our focus. The more we find out what we are looking for, sometimes we may be led to a different outcome. And that discovery would be just as important in communicating our insight to our audience. Here is how structures and arcs connect. Structure tells us what happens. Narrative arc tells us how it feels. In data storytelling, we blend logic, that is structure, and emotion, that is arc, to ensure that readers not only understand, but they also care about what we say. Before we move forward, there's a little reflection that I would like you to ask yourself. Which arc or structure felt the most natural to you? Why is it? There is no right answer. Everybody feels more comfortable with one or the other structure or arc. I just want you to take a moment and think about which one resonates the most with you. It will end up defining your own style and your preferences in storytelling. Those styles and preferences will be native to how you communicate, and they will make you unique among every other data communicator that you will encounter in your career. In concluding today's lecture, I would like to reiterate that narrative structure gives clarity and flow to data stories. Narrative arcs give momentum and engagement. That is how they are different but complementary with each other. The structure gives clarity, while the arc gives momentum and engagement. Combining both of them helps your writing resonate with your audience. Whether you are persuading policymakers or explaining findings to a client, strong narrative design turns data into action. Let the structure support your logic and let the arc carry your emotion. Together, they bring your data to life. That was it from my end for this lecture. We were discussing two different ideas, structure and arc. They are both central, important, and uncompromising in our understanding of narrative design. Moving forward, we will keep diving deeper into further nuances of storytelling. Until then, all the best, stay curious, and keep learning. Keep telling good stories now that you understand all of this in some more depth. I will see you in the next class. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaskar.